Hello, fellow bibliophiles, and welcome back to Blatantly Bookish. Today, I'd like to chat with you about the books that I read in the month of January. The year of 2021 is off to a great start reading-wise. I read 6.5 books in January, and I can't wait to discuss them all with you. So the highlight of my reading month was The Small House at Allington by Anthony Trollope. I read this book as a buddy read with Katie from Books and Things, and I am very, very slowly making my way through the Barsetshire Chronicles series. So this is the 5th book in the Barsetshire Chronicles series, and I think I read the first book, The Warden, years ago at this point. I almost never want it to end. I say every book is my new favorite in the series. As I continue throughout, the books just keep getting better and better. I become more familiar with Trollope's writing style, and I have more and more respect for him as an author. The book follows the characters of Belle Dale and Lily Dale, two sisters who live in the small house at Allington. This is contrasted with the great house at Allington, which is where their uncle, the squire, lives. So while in some respects they are given all the advantages of somebody who is titled, they also don't have the finances to back up that sort of lifestyle, and it's really interesting to see the ways in which that affects their prospects of marriage. So we follow not only Belle and Lily, but we also follow some of their prospective suitors. This book has just such an interesting contrast between country life and city life. It has bits that take place in London, bits that take place in the countryside where Allington is, and it's just quite a wonderful book. Not to mention, about 3/4 of the way through, we are introduced to all of our old friends from the other books, Mr. Harding, Mrs. Grantley, Lady DeMello, and tons of other characters. And in those scenes, we're also introduced, most notably, to Mr. Palliser, who is part of a different series of Trollope's work, which I do hope to read one day. So it's really interesting how all of these characters come together in this book. Where Trollope truly excels in this book, though, is the relationships between all of the different characters. He creates these really nuanced portrayals of familial ties and of what it means to be part of a family, the different responsibilities one has towards someone like the squire, and the different responsibilities one has when selecting a fiancé. And it compares and contrasts the stories of the two male characters, the two main male characters, in really interesting ways. I also love how Trollope inserts himself into the story and makes the narrator such a prominent role. Trollope does such a wonderful job in this book of discussing themes of marriage and money and class and how they all combine together. I think I read the most pathetic proposal in all of Victorian literature in this book. If you have another contender for most pathetic proposal, do let me know in the comments, because I really do think this one was pretty dismal. And it also has some phenomenal characters who will definitely stick with me long term. And the plot of this book was really refreshing. It did not end the way I expected it to, though I will say that it still has a very conventional Victorian ending. The ending also shirked convention in many ways, and so it was really refreshing. What I thought was going to happen didn't happen, and at first that really upset me, and I was very disappointed. But after thinking about it for quite a while, it was the right choice for Trollope to make, and it made the story more interesting and more memorable. This was just such a brilliant piece of Victorian literature, and I loved discussing it with Katie, and I just devoured this book. It must be 600 something pages, and I think I read it almost entirely in a weekend. I just couldn't put it down. So I highly, highly recommend the Barsetshire Chronicles series if you haven't given it a try before. It just keeps getting better and better, and I look forward to picking up the last chronicle of Barsetshire fairly soon. I also read the Book Wanderers series by Anna James this month. Yes, all three of them. They are The Book Wanderers, The Lost Fairy Tales, and Tilly and the Map of Stories. And I just read them so closely together that I think of them as a group now, and I'd like to discuss them all together. So they are just this amazing middle grade series with such a reverence for books and readers and bookshops and libraries. And really, if you're someone who watches BookTube because you love books, you will love this series. I can't imagine not loving it if you enjoy reading. If you think that books are magical and transport you to other places, and if you've ever wondered what it would be like to have a conversation with your favorite book character or to form a relationship with your favorite book character, this series is definitely for you. Like I said, it's middle grade, but it's really, middle grade and up. It should be like those board games that say 7+ on them, 7 and up, because I really think that adults would get a lot out of this series as well. I certainly did. The series is about Tilly Pages, who is a young girl who lives in a bookshop with her grandparents, and she discovers that she has this magical ability to book wander, or to actually go into the world of stories, to go into the world of her favorite characters and befriend people like Anne of Green Gables and Alice from Alice in Wonderland. My only issue with books about books, my only qualm about a series like this, is that it can spoil books for people. So the first book, The Book Wanderers, does spoil the books I mentioned, Alice in Wonderland, Anne of Green Gables, and A Little Princess. But I thought Anna James did such a brilliant job of writing the second and the third books so that they don't really spoil anything for readers. The second book deals with fairy tales and the mutability of stories, the tendency of the oral tradition to change stories and rewrite them based on the time period and who's telling them, etc. I mean, that's just what happens with the oral tradition. And the third book actually discusses layers of stories and really deals with Shakespeare, which I feel like you can't spoil Shakespeare. I thought the series was really brilliantly done. The relationship between Oscar and Tilly is wonderful and tons of fun. And the book opens up so many different questions and thoughts about why people read, the importance of reading, the importance of stories, and about rules and regulations regarding stories and regarding reading, sort of prescriptive reading versus reading purely for enjoyment. It's really a wonderful and magical series of books, and at first I thought everyone on BookTube loved them because they are written by Anna James, who's a booktuber herself, but I think people just love them in their own right, to be perfectly honest. This month I also read Ayiti by Roxane Gay. This is a collection of short stories all about people navigating the Haitian diaspora, so people who are connected to Haiti but have either moved to America or elsewhere, or who were born in Haiti and have ties there. It's a really interesting collection of short stories. You have some erotica in here, you have some really short flash fiction, almost just 1 or 2 pages. I love Roxane Gay as an author. I feel like I'm finally moving from her nonfiction to her fiction by picking this book up. I've read Bad Feminist by her and Hunger. I absolutely love Hunger. It's hard to tell if I like it more or less than Ayiti, but they're just very different because one is a memoir and one is rather fictional. It was interesting while reading this collection of short stories, I felt like I could hear Roxane Gay's voice, that same narrative voice from Hunger, permeate these stories, or at least in the beginning I did. And then I sort of understood that it wasn't Roxane Gay talking, these are characters she has made up. But it's really interesting, that extension of Roxane Gay's voice that permeates into her fiction. And it would be really interesting for me to read. I believe she has a novel out, in Untamed State, that I want to read as well. I'm curious if that voice carries into that book too. This book is a really powerful collection of these short stories. My two favorites in this collection were Sweet on the Tongue and In the Matter of Water or Light. Those two, I had to pause after reading them because they were just so full of emotion and nuance and depth and these fascinating layers of characterization that I just had to step away from the collection for a minute before continuing. So even though this is a really thin book, it took me a few days to finish. The way this book examines the generational trauma and history is absolutely fascinating. You can see how beauty and tragedy are all mingled together, and pride and shame are woven into these stories. There's both a sense of pride in your heritage, in belonging to Haiti, and a sense of shame of having left, of, the experiences that you had there. This book does so much in such little space, and it's truly beautiful. I highly recommend that you guys pick it up. And last but not least, I read The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells. I actually didn't like this book as much as I thought I would, or as much as I usually like Victorian literature. It's about a man who is invisible, as the title suggests, who has become invisible through scientific experimentation. And the process of invisibility actually makes him a little mad, and he ends up on a murderous spree of sorts. I think this book was really meant for the Victorian reader, someone who would be amazed at this concept of invisibility. But I feel like in today's world of Marvel and superheroes and comics, magical realism and fantasy, the concept of an invisible man is not as shocking as it's meant to be in this tale. And without that gimmick, without that shocking response to invisibility, I think this story loses a little of its initial appeal. I could see Victorian readers being mesmerized by the concept of invisibility and how the scientific process affects this man, but to me it just came across as a bit dated and something that I feel like is done better in other books. So while something like Frankenstein holds up very well in modern times, The Invisible Man for me just kind of lost that importance in today's world. Bits and pieces of this book were actually really interesting, and the character of the Invisible Man is quite mysterious, and it's fun to see how all the characters relate to him and what they think of him, and to try and solve this mystery of the Invisible Man as you progress through the book. But like I said, I just don't think it translates well into the modern day, for me at least. I think if you're very interested in sci-fi and the beginnings of that genre, especially the trope of the mad scientist, this would be an interesting read for you. That's not exactly a genre I am super knowledgeable about or super interested in, but I think you could study this book in context with other early works of science fiction in interesting ways. So yes, that is what I read in the month of January. Oh, I forgot about the half a book, but you guys already know about that if you've checked out my Villette vlog. I read a very, very, very little bit of Villette in January, and I read a lot more of Villette in February. So I have a Villette vlog up, and I do plan on doing a February video, or maybe early March at this rate, we'll see, about Villette. I have actually just finished the book, and I hope to have a whole discussion of it on my channel as part of the Bronte project that I'm doing this year. I hope you all had great reading months as well, and I would love to know in the comments below, what did you read in the month of January? What were your favorite books? And have you read any of these books that I've read? I would love to hear all of your thoughts on them in the comment section. So until next time, I look forward to seeing you in another video soon. Bye!